America. Yo, let's be real. America is the land of the bold, the free, and the ones who never back down. A place where dreams turn into reality, where hard work can take you from zero to hero. From the neon lights of New York to the golden beaches of California, this country has built itself up on power, ambition, and innovation. They call it the land of opportunity for a reason, because here, you hustle, you grind, and if you play your cards right, you make it big. Freedom, justice, and a never-quit attitude. That's the American way. At least that's what they say. But let's take a step back and ask, at what cost? But listen up real good now. The discovery of America, year 1492. All right, so let me break this down for you. The Native American genocides, this isn't some quick event in history. We're talking about centuries of horror, starting from 1492, when Columbus landed and claimed, hey, this land is ours now. The thing is, it wasn't just one bad guy. It was a whole system built on destruction, greed, and racism. Over 500 years, European settlers and later the US government turned the genocide of Native peoples into an ongoing strategy to grab land, power, and resources. Let's start with the violence. Massacres were common. Whole tribes were wiped out, either by direct attacks or through campaigns of terror. One infamous example is the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864, where US soldiers attacked a peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho village in Colorado. Over 150 people were killed, most of them women, children, and elders. The soldiers didn't just kill them, they mutilated the bodies and kept trophies, and that wasn't even rare. Events like the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890, where hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children were gunned down, showed just how brutal the system was. But it wasn't just the guns. The settlers knew how to weaponize everything, including disease. Ever heard of smallpox blankets? The idea was to intentionally spread diseases like smallpox among native populations, knowing full well they had no immunity. Some say it wasn't always deliberate, but there's clear evidence of it being used as a weapon in certain cases. It's like saying, we don't need to shoot them. They'll die off naturally if we just give it a little push. The result? Whole tribes disappeared, leaving behind empty villages and forgotten languages. Then there's the cultural destruction, which was just as insidious. Native children were torn from their families and sent to boarding schools. These schools were run by Christian missionaries or the government, and their whole purpose was to civilize Native kids. But what that really meant was erasing their identities. They couldn't speak their languages, practice their traditions, or even wear traditional clothing. They were given new names, often English ones, and forced to follow strict, abusive rules. The trauma from these schools didn't just affect the kids who attended, they carried it back to their communities, breaking cultural ties that had existed for centuries. And get this, it wasn't just about killing the culture. There were actual programs to stop Native people from reproducing. Forced sterilizations were carried out on Native women, sometimes without their knowledge or consent. In the 1970s, thousands of Native women were sterilized in the US, many under the pretense of receiving medical care. It was genocide, plain and simple, a direct attempt to erase entire populations. Now let's talk about those so-called American holidays. Columbus Day? For Native folks, it's not a day of discovery. It's the start of destruction. Celebrating Columbus is like throwing a party for the guy who kicked off centuries of suffering. And Thanksgiving? The way it's taught in schools is all warm and fuzzy. Pilgrims and Native Americans sitting together sharing food. But for many Native people, it's a reminder of betrayal and bloodshed. The Thanksgiving story leaves out the massacres, the broken treaties, and the stolen lands that came after. So, did the US ever own up to this? Kind of. In 2000, the Bureau of Indian Affairs formally apologized for its role in the ethnic cleansing of Native Americans. That's over 500 years late, and even then, it wasn't like they could undo the damage. Generations of Native communities had already been devastated. Today, unemployment rates on reservations are sky high, poverty is rampant, and systemic racism makes it hard for Native people to get fair opportunities. The scars of genocide aren't just historical, they're alive and well. And let's not forget about the land itself. Native tribes lost over 1.5 billion acres of land. That's land they'd lived on for thousands of years, taken away through treaties that were often signed under pressure or straight up ignored later. Even now, fights over land and resources continue. Tribes are constantly battling corporations and governments just to protect what little they have left. The Dakota Access Pipeline protests, for example, weren't just about oil. They were about the continued disregard for Native sovereignty and sacred lands. But here's the thing, Native peoples are still here. Despite everything they've resisted, they've kept their languages, their traditions, and their cultures alive. Native artists, activists, and leaders are reclaiming their stories and fighting for justice, and more people are starting to listen. This history, it's messy, it's painful, and it's real. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It's on all of us to learn, to acknowledge, and to support the fight for Native rights. Because respect, truth, and justice, that's the least we can do.